Good evening. Let us discuss about 20th May 2015 newspaper. So in this context, the first most important article is about big data. If you can remember Herbert Simon, what he said is the decision making to an extent, if it becomes rational, then most of the issues will be solved. So in the process, the data and availability of information is the major bottleneck. And then processing of this information is another bottleneck. Now in this information technology age, the big data is trying to solve these particular problems. So in this case, the evidence-based decision making and actionable information, these are the two things which are being widely spoken about. What is meant by evidence-based in decision making? So to make or improve the quality of decisions, an actionable information is required. So it means that on the positive side, everything which is supported by a proof, it helps in improving the quality of decisions, productivity and efficiency. But if you take it to the extreme side, how are we making the decisions as of now? We are building something called cause and effect relationship through a scientific methodology, or the world scientific method derived correlations, cause and effect relationships, they are no longer becoming relevant here. The data is one simple thing which will make the decisions instead of individuals. So two sets of data will be given, so which is good or which is bad, you make it, the decision has been automatically made. So in this context, the relevance of the world scientific methods is being lost now. Now the second thing is, data is money. The data is the new asset class which is created. So the worth of this thing is been believed to be around $19 trillion. It means a new information economy is created. Now the major challenge is this. Who are the owners of this information? Now this information is generated by you and me, that is the people. But the big multinational companies, they are owning this information, or they are using this information for various permutations and combinations, and they are gaining value out of that particular data. So it means it is leading to a kind of data colonialism, in which the person who is generating the data, he do not have any authority or control over this data, how it will be used for. And if you see, the health related data of Indians, which may be used for the clinical trials in the United States, the Indians do not get any benefit out of this. If you can say biodiversity, previously, if a plant is being taken up from India and done some research in the United States, ultimately the entire benefit used to go for that particular company doing the research. The similar case, the data is generated in a developing country, but the benefits are going to the West. So this kind is described as data colonialism. And another challenge which is coming is the privacy challenges. Now if you see the Aadhaar card, everything, these can be used to monitor and predict the behavior of an individual. It means every citizen will be viewed as a customer. And the market economics of demand and supply, they are going to determine where you stand in these things. So what is the end of the day is, your privacy is being compromised for variety of functions you perform as a customer. And the commodification of information, it is fixing the responsibility for the choices away from the person who made it. Because commodification of information means information is a commodity now, which can be bought and sold. So it means the decision making is going to more depend upon this information. It means, so if information is positively evaluated, if information is positively used, it ultimately improves the performance of the organization. So it is good for the commercial organizations, but it is not sure how it will improve the policy decision making with regard to the political organizations concerned. That's what is the author's opinion is. So data everywhere, it will improve the quality of decision making, there is no doubt about it. But who owns the data is the big question, and privacy of the citizens is the another big question over here, which we need to focus on. In this case, the electoral reforms, let us try to understand these issues over here. First one is, in Subhash Chandra Agarwal case, the Central Information Commission already it has declared that all the national and regional political parties shall declare about their sources of funding. The electoral funding is an important source from which we can analyze the party's decision making and understand that the political parties yield huge power on its MLAs and MPs. If you take the Schedule 10 of the Constitution under anti-defection law, the MLAs and MPs are expected to follow the whip of the political party. In these circumstances, these are having a huge influence on the public discourse and also the policy making. In this context, these have to be declared as the public authorities under the Right to Information Act. So in this context, though, in spite of a decision by the Central Information Commission, none of the political party has divulged its sources of funding. And the present article, what it says is, according to Section 29A of Representation of People's Act, RPA Act 1951, every political party has to give or affirm their allegiance to the Constitution of India. So as RTI is the part of the freedom of speech, the political party shall furnish information under the RTI Act. It helps the citizens to make the informed choices. So the 29A section of Representation of People's Act 1951, it says that every political party shall show its allegiance to the Constitution of India. So the Supreme Court has declared RTI is integral to the freedom of speech and expression under the Article 19(1)(a) of the Constitution. It means that all the political parties shall furnish their information or funding information under the RTI Act. Now let's get into the other thing. So the Republic without a language. Now this is one of the beautiful article in the newspaper. If you observe that the politicization of the masses, it is the key to the success of the functional democracy. The politicization of the masses, it means that masses, everything depends on them. Either stagnation, it is their fault. Either if there is a progress, they are too responsible for it. This is what is the political scientist Frantz Fanon has talked about. So, the masses are responsible, or masses are the driving forces of the democracy. Now in this context, the ethos of a democracy involves a transformation of a nation by its people. Now the problem in India is, we have a personality cult culture. If you see from Jawaharlal Nehru days onwards, then to Indira Gandhi days, then to Rajiv Gandhi days, then to today's Narendra Modi days, everywhere there is a sense of personality cult. It means the citizens or Indian people, their power is systematically delegated to an individual, and the political discourse is becoming very superficial without proper engagement of the people. It means that the democracy is becoming too superficial. So that is the reason why can Modi change India? So or else Modi is becoming a central figure with regard to every action of the government. It is leading to the centralization of power, and the centralization of the power is the major reason for the policy paralysis. In the previous Manmohan Singh government, the development of extra constitutional authority is also a reflection of this particular dynasty politics and also the growth of the cult figure in the Indian democracy. So, the fundamental problem in India is there is no critical mass of the people organizations that is challenging the status quoism. If you observe that, recently the government is cracking down on civil society, and this cracking down is not questioned by any other people's organization. So, the growing of charismatic politics, lack of internal democracy in the political systems, the regressive majoritarianism, degeneration of the politics, all these are a reflection of a degenerating democracy in India. So it means the empowerment of masses, it is the decentralization of power. So empowerment of masses is ultimately the strengthening of the democracy. So the decentralization of power which flows from the empowerment of masses, it is going to make the democratic function deepen in a particular society. So leaders do not build the democracies. It is the people who build the democracies. The magic lies in their hands and their hands alone, and they are responsible for the success or failure of a democracy. Next is the reforms in higher education. So what are the challenges? Now recently the government has suggested for this. The first thing is the choice based credit system was introduced in planning to be introduced in higher universities. And educationists, they are criticizing this standardization of higher education across the country, universities in the country. This year, the budgetary allocations for the higher education, they decreased to a tune of 3,900 crores. And the second thing is, there is a central sponsored scheme that is called as Rashtriya Uchatar Shiksha Abhiyan. Even for this, Rashtriya Uchatar Shiksha Abhiyan, that is RUSA, for this also the funds have drastically decreased. And the government is more and more relying on the private sector to provide for the education in the higher education. What is the anomaly growing because of this? The stress on the science education is increasing against the social studies. So, the maths physics are gaining prominence over something called as arts and humanities. And the one dangerous trend that is what is growing centralization in higher education. The choice-based credit system, what it is leading is the standardization of the syllabus, the standardization of the curriculum, and also standardization of teaching across the universities. The universities, central universities in India, are built according to the circumstances of that situation. So if you can remember, the JNU Act, it has specified different goals for that university. The Delhi University is made under different goals. And if you take about northeastern universities, they are made for different goals. Now the central government intends to bring all central universities under one act. It means that there is homogenization and the centralization of the control of the syllabus in the country. So in a diverse country such as India, heterogeneity is the factor that has to determine the course curriculum and etc. But however, this homogenization and centralization which is being provided or provoked by the existing NDA government is going to curtail the creativity and innovation in India. So that is what is the major problem which we foresee now. And next is Aruna Shanbog's death, which has brought in euthanasia central to the discussion again. So in this article, a concept discussed is called as living will. Already this living will is in practice in United States of America. A person will determine his choice, how he has to be treated when he is terminally ill. That document is called as a living will. So at his last days, either he has to be kept on artificial life supporting system, or he has to be given a dignified death. This will be determined by that individual during his lifetime. So this living will is not a legal practice in India. So if living will is given legal validity in India, it will provide a way for dignified death in India. So that is what is article discussed about. And next is India-European Union talks. Now recently, if you remember, the European Union ambassador, he showed or he expressed his inclination towards resuming the talks on India-European Union Free Trade Agreement. Now let us take the history of this. India and European Union, EU is one of the largest trade partners of India. They became the strategic partners in 2004 and a joint action plan was signed in 2005 and a broad-based trade and investment agreement. So BTIA, broad-based trade and investment agreement, it came up in 2007. Now what are the major irritants in this? One is European Union imposed a ban on the Indian mangoes. And the second thing is, what the complaint of the European Union is, India has a high tariff structure on the automobile sector. And also India is not allowing the import of the agricultural products from European Union. What India argues that is, the agricultural products in the European Union are highly subsidized. If they are dumped into India, it is going to threaten the interests of the Indian farmers. So, and again, along with this, the services sector, if you see, the Mode 1 and Mode 4 services, in this particular area, there is a huge conflict. Let us see what is Mode 1 services. Now, the BPO, Business Processing Industry, Knowledge Processing Industry, everything comes under the Mode 1. And Mode 4 is the natural movement of the people from India to European Union to perform the jobs over there. So now if you see, the visa restrictions are going to hinder the Mode 4. Now the loss of the jobs in the mother countries, that is in the Europe, it is not encouraging the local countries to come on to the Mode 1 now. So these are the irritants to India. And along with that, the European Union is not encouraging the generic drugs from India. The reason being is, the European Union is not confident about the protection of the intellectual property rights regime in India. And India is not kept under the countries which are data secure. So which is a complaint of the India. So these are the things that have to be resolved. And next is, the promise on transparency is not kept. So the public grievances bill, which the NDA government promised in its elections, these are not yet kept, are not yet fulfilled. The Lokpal bill is also be amended, and previously the officer, his children and his spouse have to declare their assets. Now this particular thing is being compromised, and only officer, if he declare his assets, it is sufficient under the Lokpal bill. And next is, with regard to Chakravyu, so it analyzed the 1 year performance of Mr. Modi. It says that with regard to the pluralistic or concerns on the public discourse, the restrictions on NGOs, etc., non-access to media, he performed low. And next is, on the personal ethos and also the political philosophy which he believes in, it is not yet clear. So on these three fronts, it is not yet active. And other than that, with regard to the foreign policy, the political coalition for governance, instruments of governance, he performed relatively well. On the respect of democratic and parliamentary institutions, he performed moderate. In that way, that particular individual or this article tried to analyze that. And finally, the gold deposit scheme. Now in this, there are CRR and SLR, cash reserve ratio and statutory liquidity ratio. This particular CRR, it is the portion of the total deposits which has to be kept in with RBI as cash. The SLR means the portion of the deposits which has to be kept in the form of governmental securities. Now CRR is around 4%, SLR is around 21.5%. It means almost 25.5% of the total deposits that have to be kept with the one or the other way, fixed with the RBI. In these circumstances, the monetization scheme was suggested by the finance minister. If any citizen keeps his gold in the bank and that particular bank will show this gold under this particular reserves. So again as this, the bank can give or provide for more funds for operations. So it increases the liquidity available with the banks. So that helps the banks to stay viable. So that is what is this article talks about. Thank you very much.